Hey guys, I'm going to read chapter 6 and possibly chapter 7. Let me take a look. Yeah, it'll probably just be chapter 6 for today. So we'll go ahead and get started. If you remember when Heidi was leaving the airport, Sam the lion, the dog, his name is Sam the lion. Anyway, Sam the dog actually jumped in one of those little airport carts and sat on top of the accelerator and, as oblivious as ever, just kind of ended up driving the cart with a big giant airplane following him, smashing through telephone poles and such. And Heidi looks back and sees him. And after he kind of, I don't know, creates a whole lot of havoc and chaos, he eventually finds his way into Mrs. Beaglehole's car. He climbs in through the window and then he jumps into Heidi's bag. And Heidi quietly moves his muzzle, his nose, his mouth down into the bag and zips it up. So that's where we left off. That was chapter 5. This is chapter 6. Snort. I remember this place like a dream, said Heidi, allowing a smile. She leaned over Mrs. Beaglehole's shoulder and peered out the town car's front window at the extraordinary sight ahead of her. The car had turned off a country road and into a tunnel made of a dark canopy of great oak trees. As they emerged back into the sunlight, two 20-foot-high Great Danes made of shrubbery stood sentinel on either side of the final entrance of McLeod Heavenly Acres. The driveway pointed to the top of the highest hill for miles around, atop which stood the McLeod Mansion, one of Heidi's faded memories from 8 years before. She let out a low whistle, which made the renegade dachshund hiding in her bag stir. Whistles are to dogs what pricked thumb is to a vampire. Heidi pushed her last taffy candy bar into the bag to quiet her stowaway. Something's different, said Heidi, still staring out the window. She saw rows and rows of empty kennels in the near distance. The dogs are gone. Your uncle seems to have lost interest in dogs after your parents were... Mrs. Beaglehole trailed off. You can just come out and say it, said Heidi. Eaten by schnauzers? Mrs. Beaglehole spun around and gave the smirking girl the evil cow eye. The woman was shocked at her coolness toward her parents. Why not coolness? Heidi had never known her family, really. Her memories of parents were like dim figures peeking out from a thick fog. All she had known from the last 8 years was a girls' school in the freezing hills of Minnesota and platoons of behemoth penguins pretending to be nuns. Mrs. Beaglehole continued, your uncle sold off all the beautiful dogs. All! So beautiful. Like tossing out Louis Vuitton handbags. This was the first of many snorts of displeasure. Heidi read somewhere that water buffaloes snort before they ram people. Your Uncle Hamish now mostly spends his time alone. Doesn't seem interested in much of anything. I arrived a few years ago to take care of things while he... She snorted. Well, he's not well. Which is why I sent for you. This time, Heidi snorted. She was going to demand the truth about her parents' deaths, and why her uncle had sent her away years ago, but she changed her mind. She looked at the rows of empty kennels passing by. There aren't any dogs left at all? Miss Beaglehole brightened visibly. Why, yes, dear. Mine, and that makes 1. Heidi felt her bag move as the dachshund chewed his first banana taffy. 2, thought Heidi. The car pulled up to the grand house's grand entrance, where Heidi's door was opened by a younger woman in a neat housekeeper's apron, who didn't make Heidi think of cows at all. A quiet baby was slung tightly across her back in a sling. Heidi McLeod? I'm Miss Violet. I look after your uncle's house. and the cooking. And my Bruno here, of course. She held up the baby's socked foot. Miss Beaglehole snorted. Ugh, it looks like an Indian papoose, Violet. There's a nice picture of the baby. Miss Violet took Heidi's hand and looked at her with a softness that she wasn't used to. Your mother and I were good friends when we were girls. I used to play with her in this very house. And isn't it funny? Now I'm back looking after her brother. Actually, Miss Violet, that is my job, injected Miss Beaglehole with an edge to her voice. You see to lunch. Miss Beaglehole climbed onto a step leading to the front door so that she was slightly higher than either of them. Come along, your uncle is waiting to see you. You're off a button with your sweater, dear. Heidi followed Miss Beaglehole into the entry. She gasped. Dark paneled walls soared to a ceiling 3 stories above her. Wow. Straight ahead, a grand staircase curved upward into the darkness. In fact, the entire house was dark. But that's what made the girl stop and stare. The dogs. Ghosts of McLeod family purebreds. The walls were covered with them. In huge paintings, 8 feet tall, they sat rigid and regal, as if stunned into bewildered awe by the glory of their own fabulousness. A Bolivian flat-nosed spitting spaniel, an orange-crested Dutch baby Dusentrugel, a Chinese kiss-and-tellin' terrier, many more, far more exotic. Heidi let out another long, low whistle, which again made the dachshund hiding inside the bag across her shoulder stop chewing the taffy and reflexively blurt out, "What? Hello? I'm here. My tongue is stuck to the roof of my mouth." He said this in dog, of course, and it emerged as a garbled yip. Heidi heard it and tried to cover it up by shuffling a large chair next to her. Mrs. Beaglehole glanced about. "Moles," she sniffed. There was another set of ears nearby, however, far less easily fooled. A large poodle with a red bow came tearing in from the kitchen, barking maniacally. "I heard that! I heard that! Who is that? Who was that?" he yelled. Mrs. Beaglehole spun around and threw her arms wide. "There's my darling champion to be. Heidi, this is Cassius." Heidi stared at the pathetic creature. Beach ball-sized explosions of fuzzy hair erupted like creeping blobs of attacking white broccoli across an entirety of the starved beast's shaved skeleton. Is he gonna die?" asked Heidi. "Oh, on the contrary. He is going to win the Westminster one day," said Mrs. Beaglehole, reaching down through miles and miles of poodle fur and fluffing it up to an even more terrifying extent. Cassius turned to Miss Beaglehole with a lick to lick her nose. She thrust out a hand to stop him. "Tut, no lickies, Cassius. You know only on my feet and before bath time. I shall count the minutes until paradise, madame," mumbled the poodle, rolling his eyes. He looked around the room. He'd heard a yip. He knew a yip when he heard one, and it wasn't a stupid yard mole. He ate them all the time, and they never yipped. Unless he thought, you started the tail, and went very, very slow. There's a good picture of Cassius. I don't know if you guys have ever seen what a poodle looks like, but all shaved and poofy. Heidi's first impression is that she's not very impressed. She, in fact, thinks that he perhaps could be dying because he's mostly shaved with some poofs of hair here and there. So we'll end there for today, and we shall read Chapter 7 tomorrow.